place in your life, everything, whatever it is, understand that it first had to be imagined. It started out as a thought. We are all thoughts of God. Now, if you know that everything that ever existed once had to be thought, then you start, and as I used to tell Sky this over and over again, you must contemplate yourself surrounded by the conditions which you wish to have show up in your life. You must contemplate this. Your thoughts in your imagination, you continuously contemplate what it is. You know, the law of flotation was not discovered by the contemplation of the sinking of things. The law of flying, these beautiful machines that fly over and take us all over the world, was not discovered by the contemplation of the staying on the ground of things. It was contemplated by someone or several people who contemplated heavier than air objects moving through the air at a certain speed with wind pushing under that. And that's what they contemplated, and they wouldn't allow themselves. You can't, if you contemplate things not working. I'm on an airplane. And I'm sitting next to a woman who's a photographer on Maui, had just done a wedding and was flying back to San Francisco. And she's got all of this equipment, and I said to her, you're a photographer? Is that what you do? She said, yes. I said, do you like it? She said, yeah. She said, but I'll never get rich at it. I said, would you like to get rich? She said, well, of course. Who wouldn't want to get rich? I said, let me see who I'm going to sit next to for the next 5 hours. I'm sitting next to someone who believes that she can't get rich and anticipates that it will never happen for her, even though it's something that you want. Is that what you're saying? We had this, she was very nice talking to her and a very sweet lady. But so often this is what we do. We have thoughts in our head about what we can't do, and then we wonder. I used to give the example of if I gave you $1 million and I said to you, take this $1 million and go out, and this is your currency to purchase anything that you want, anything at all that you want. And so you go to the mall, and the first store you come into has a group of these ugly old rugs, and you say, I'll take 2 of those. They're $50,000 a piece. And you say, but you don't even like them. I know, send them to my house. And then you look at another store, and they are selling lamps, and the lamps are just hideous looking. And you say, I'll buy 10 of those. That'll be $100,000. And then you get home, and you realize that your house is filled with all of this stuff that you don't want. And you say, how come my whole house is filled with things I don't want? It's because you're crazy. It's because you've been given a currency to attract what you do want, and you put your attention on what you don't want and spend your currency thinking about all the things that you don't want, which is what your thoughts are. You never, but never, but never want to put your attention on what you don't want unless you want to attract what you don't want. You don't ever want to think about what's missing in your life unless you want more of what's missing in your life. You don't even want to think about what is unless you want more of what is to continue showing up in your life. You want to use your imagination to place in your imagination what it is that you would like to attract into your life, and you hold on to it. And that's the secret. It's called having a burning desire. I learned it from Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich. People who are able to attract prosperity into their life have a burning desire, and they never place their thoughts on what they can't have. They just don't think in those ways. Self-actualizing people always place their attention on what is showing up in their life. So the first thing you do is you place in your imagination what you would like to attract into your life, and you hang on to it. The second thing you do is you live from the end instead of about the end. Living from the end means that you act as if what it is that you would like to attract into your life is already here. I suggest, Dan, that you probably did this when you were in the 2nd and 3rd and 4th grade learning to tie your shoes without any hands. That you could always have a pick, because you wouldn't have continued with it if you didn't. You had to have a picture of yourself doing this. Even though you didn't know how to do it, in your imagination, you were already doing it. I know this because we've talked about this personally many times. And this is something I'm telling you that I have lived from my entire life. When I wrote Erroneous Zones, I saw it being translated into languages all over the world. I saw people wanting to get it. It was just something that I had a knowing about. Tracy will tell you about it. It was over and over and over again. There was never a thought that this is something that isn't going to work out. I lived from the end. The third thing that you do after you live from the end is that, and this is the most important, I'm going to write an entire book about this from a great teacher who lived right here in California named Neville, who passed away in the early 1970s. A great lecturer and great teacher. He wrote about something called the power of assumption, that when you assume something to be true, and not only do you assume it to be true, you hold on to it in your imagination, that the assumption of it, if you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Now, I've talked about three things here, and I'm doing this quickly. I could usually do this in several hours with each one of these. In your imagination, you place what it is you would like to attract, how you would like your life to go, whatever it might be. You think from the end. You're always acting as if what it is that you would like to attract, even if it may not have shown up in the physical world for you, you don't even pay attention to that. It's in your imagination because you know that you can't manifest anything unless you're willing to imagine it, because everything that has ever showed up was once imagined. And then you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And what is the assumption of the feeling of the wish fulfilled? Where do you feel things? You feel it in here. You feel it in your gut. You feel it in your heart. You feel it in your head. You feel it. You assume the feeling of this wish, whatever it is you would like to attract into your life, being fulfilled. You live this way. Some call it living a fantasy. Some think that it's just pie in the sky. Some think it's just being optimistic. It doesn't make any difference. Whatever it is you do with it, your imagination, thinking from the end, and assuming the feeling of this wish fulfilled is a very, very powerful tool for attracting into your life what you want. I've written about it in Excuses Be Gone and in The Power of Attention. The fourth thing that you do, and this is all out crucial, is that when the subject matter comes up of this particular thing that you would like to attract into your life, whenever it comes up, you have two choices. You can either use subjective attention or you can use objective attention. Objective attention is the attention that comes to you from outside of yourself, is objectified outside of you. So you want to get rich. I'll give you an example, a better example. It was this young man, 39-year-old man, came up to me at a mall when I was with Sky and Serena in Los Angeles before the premiere of The Shift, the movie. And he was a chronic stutterer, speech impediment very, very bad. He could barely get words out without halting and halting. Just very difficult. His name was Vincent. It took me 5 minutes to figure that out. So Vincent started talking to me. He recognized me, but he didn't know if he could come up or not, and he had read and seen me on public television and read some of my books, but he'd been stuttering since he was 3 or 4 years old. And I said to him, he asked me if there was anything that I could do to help him. I said, okay, in your imagination, Vincent, I said, can you picture yourself as being free of stuttering? Can you picture yourself in that way? And he said, no. I said, well, then I can't help you. He said, wait. I said, okay, you can go. And we started to turn around. He said, no, wait. He said, okay. He said, I can do that. I said, now I want you to get a picture of yourself as being able to speak without halting. Oh, okay, I can do that in my mind. I said, only in your mind. You don't have to do it physically. It doesn't make any difference because your mind is where everything is created from. Okay. Now, can you live from that end rather than about that end? Well, that was very hard for him to do, but I said, but in your imagination, can you live from the end? He said, yes. I said, now what does that feel like? Picture it. You're living from that faith. Assume the feeling of this wish fulfilled. What does it feel like? And he said, it feels great. Great. I said, I want you to hang on to that feeling. Just hang on to that feeling. Because we do things on the basis of how we're going to feel. If you call my cell phone and you get the message, it says, this is Wayne Dyer that you've reached, and I want to feel good. If your message is designed to do anything other than that, you've reached the wrong number. I suggest you call Dr. Phil. That's what it says. It's been saying that for years. Because feeling good is the same thing. Muktananda, as people would walk into his ashram, and he would say, do you know the difference between good and God? And if they didn't know, he would just do this. 0. There's no difference. Just one little 0 between good and God, one little O. Good and God are the same. Feeling good is the same as feeling God. So I said, Vincent, can you hold on to that? I said, now here comes the test. I said, when the subject matter of your stuttering comes up, what kind of attention are you going to put on it, objective or subjective? Objective is, you've been stuttering since you were 3 years old, that's 36 years, so you're pretty much stuck with that in your life. What does that do for you? What do you do when you hear that? When you see research studies that say overcoming it after this many years is impossible, what do you do with that? You can return to the place in your imagination where you have already decided to live from that place and just go there. That's called subjective attention. But if you use objective attention, you'll say, oh, they're probably right. I can't do that. It's like the woman next to me saying, I'll never get rich at it. Why not have in your imagination getting rich? And why not every time the subject matter of whether you can get wealthy doing weddings on Maui, for you, in your imagination, you go to the place where it's bringing all the riches that you want. You are content. Objective or subjective. The problem for most people is if they decide they want to lose weight, if they decide they want to attract the right person into their life, if they decide that they want to have, they listen to all of the negativity that's out there in the world, and they use that negativity to reinforce that they can't do something, and they stop. Instead of going right back to their imagination, you have to be a scurvy elephant on this. You do. The negativity that's out there will permeate. I love this story. I don't know if I can tell it on television, but I'm going to anyway. Told me by my friend Tom Barber. A couple from Nebraska had come to New York where they encountered sort of a New York attitude everywhere they went. And they weren't accustomed to this sort of fast-talking rudeness that they just weren't used to getting. And they were getting all day long, everywhere they went, they were getting it. Finally, it was 4:45, and they still hadn't seen the Empire State Building. And they went up to someone, a New Yorker on the street, and they said, excuse me, can you tell us how to find the Empire State Building, or should we just go fuck ourselves? I love that story for some reason. You're going to run into the attitudes that you can't do things over and over again. Particularly, are you going to run into it in your families? But your friends are God's way of apologizing for your relatives, all right? And even with your relatives, you can just not allow their belief that this is something that you can't have happen take you away from what you've already established in your imagination, because once you've established it in your imagination and you've assumed the feeling of the wish fulfilled and you are acting as if this is your life, you start moving to an energy up here, an energy of all things are possible. I call it thinking with awareness. With God, it says in the New Testament, with God, all things are what? Possible. What does that leave out? What does all things are possible leave out? Leaves out nothing, doesn't it? That's the scripture. And that's in virtually all spiritual teachings. When you move and elevate your life to the higher place and become the God within, you're omniscient, you're all-knowing, you're all-powerful. It's in your mind, and you never allow anybody else's opinion to do anything other than take you back to the place in your imagination where it will be fulfilled. Now, the fifth step here is called your subconscious mind. And your subconscious mind is a very intriguing thing. If you listen to my friend Bruce Lipton, who will be speaking here this weekend, and he's really terrific. He wrote a book that I promoted on my public television special, The Biology of Belief. It transformed my life because it taught me that even our DNA, even our genetics, the science of epigenetics, is the science where we begin to realize that our thinking, our thoughts, our way of processing and perceiving the world can alter even our genes.